Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, new video from the Poway Synagogue shooting. It's part of an emotional day in court. We'll have an update as prosecutors try to move the case to trial.
I remember staying that night, all night, like so embarrassed, and dealing with police is not easy.
Victims of a former sheriff's deputy talked to KPBS about the abuse they endured and their reaction to his plea deal.
As you know, and why IB, you're here talking to me, is because IB is vulnerable. Highest point in the whole city is 40 feet, so the whole area is low-lying.
San Diego's climate crisis. As part of a week of special coverage, we take a closer look at how one local community is already feeling the effects. And the military says there's something out there. Confirmation of its chance encounter with UFOs caught on camera. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. It's Thursday, September 19th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. We start tonight with disturbing video. For the first time, we're seeing surveillance from the Chabad of Poway during April's attack. It was shown as evidence in the preliminary hearing for the accused shooter. One person died and 3 others were hurt. The court also listened to a 911 call made by the shooter where he explains his motive.
I'm just trying to defend my nation from the Jewish people. How old are you, son? 19. They're destroying our people. I'm trying to show them that we're not going to go down without a fight.
Today's hearing included witness testimony and evidence that allegedly links the suspect's computer to extremist websites. The court hearing will continue tomorrow. Last week, District Attorney Summer Stephan struck a plea deal with a former sheriff's deputy who's been accused of sexually assaulting more than a dozen women. But no sexual assault charges were included in the deal. KPBS investigative reporter Claire Tragesser talked to 2 of the victims who say they're surprised and upset. And a warning, this report includes graphic descriptions of sex acts.
Former sheriff's deputy Richard Fischer was initially charged with 20 counts of assault, burglary, forcing oral sex, and sexual battery. But his plea deal with the DA did not include any of the sex charges. Instead, he pleaded to 4 felony assaults, 3 misdemeanor assaults, and misdemeanor false imprisonment. At the most, Fischer could face 5 years in prison. There's also a chance he won't serve any prison time. 2 of Fischer's victims say his plea deal invalidates what happened to them.
If somebody is guilty of some charge, need to be guilty and need to be charged with that.
One woman who asked that KPBS only identify her by her initials TD says she first encountered Fischer in January 2017 when he was called to her home to check on her welfare. He returned several times and would force her to kiss and hug him. She was afraid to say anything bad about the police.
He take my right wrist and take me in my bedroom, sit me on a bed, and he opened his zipper and forcing my head. I don't know how long that was, like maybe can be 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 1 minute. I cannot know exactly. I remember the dog from his car was barking so loud. This is what is gonna stay in my head, like the memory I have. And
I remember staying that night, all night, like so embarrassed, and dealing with police is not easy.
TD says district attorney prosecutors told her Fischer would plead guilty to forced oral sex. That didn't happen.
I think anybody who make mistake, they need to, if they make plea bargain, they need to plea on what they're done.
Her experience has made her question whether the justice system works.
My desire is for all new generation, all females, and to be safe and not to be scared to tell the truth.
Fischer's defense attorney, Gretchen von Helms, told KPBS the majority of the victims wanted a plea deal. District Attorney Summer Stephan declined an interview request. She sent a press release after the deal saying it was, quote, in accordance with the wishes of the overwhelming number of victims who agree it is a just and appropriate resolution that holds the defendant accountable for his crimes. Stephan also says a judge will decide whether Fischer has to register as a sex offender, which is still possible but not guaranteed since he didn't plead to sex charges. Michael Crowley is a criminal defense attorney not involved in the case.
Get him to the point of where it is discretionary to have the sex registration, that the judge will make that decision, probably based on psychological reports and the static 99. That's huge.
He says if the sex charges were included, sexual offender registration would be mandatory. Another woman who asked only to be identified by her initials KP says she also believed Fischer would be pleading guilty to sexual assault. She accused Fischer of groping her during a traffic stop.
When they read it off and then it was over, I was kind of looking around like, wait, that's it? Like, that's what he got charged with? Like, it was really baffling, honestly.
Fischer will be sentenced in early December. Claire Tregesser, KPBS News.
Fischer and the Sheriff's Department also face civil lawsuits from most of the victims. More today from the Trump administration in its legal fight with California over auto emissions. Leaders from the Department of Transportation and the EPA formally announced what they're calling the One National Program. It will end a waiver California was granted under the Clean Air Act to set its own standards for gas mileage. With 35 million registered vehicles, car makers have followed the California standard for decades, but that will soon change.
No state has the authority to opt out of the nation's rules, and no state has the right to impose its policies on everybody else in our whole country. To do otherwise harms consumers and damages the American economy.
Governor Gavin Newsom says the state will fight the rule change in court. Meanwhile, lawmakers are considering a bill that would boost rebates for electric vehicles made by companies that follow California's emission standard. Amazon is making cutbacks when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions. The online shopping giant has vowed to order 100,000 electric vehicles and increase its solar use. Currently, Amazon delivers more than 10 billion items a year on fuel-guzzling planes, vans, and trucks. Today's announcement comes a day before more than 1,500 Amazon employees pledged to walk off their jobs as part of the worldwide global climate strike. Imperial Beach is one of the lowest-lying cities in California. It regularly experiences flooding during high tides and storms. As part of our week-long series on San Diego's climate crisis, KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says rising oceans are threatening to make flooding even worse.
So actually, I'm almost a low tide. This is low tide, and we still have, the water hitting the rocks.
Robert Stabenow is captain of the Imperial Beach Lifeguards.
As you know, and why IB, you're here talking to me, is because IB is vulnerable. IB's highest point in the whole city is 40 feet, so the whole area is low-lying.
Stabenow grew up in IB and has been a lifeguard there for 37 years.
It used to be, we get coastal flooding, like I said, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but it was every 5 to 10 years. We're expecting that pretty much every high tide in the winter months.
Stabenow is in charge of fortifying the city when flooding is expected. He's no climate expert, but says he's seen the flooding get worse over time.
In the past, we had open areas, so we'd have coastal flooding, but it'd slowly come up and over the top. And it wasn't as significant. What you're seeing now, the amount of water that comes up over the top is, flooding the whole street with seaweed and other debris and sand.
In some areas of Imperial Beach, the water literally goes right up to homes. And Stabenow says people living with a waterfront view do not want to have to move their homes.
That's a very touchy subject, and relocation of residents and their homes, and some of these people that's been in their homes for their life, and they don't want to be relocated. I'll get relocated when the ocean tells me it's time to be relocated. I don't want somebody telling them they have to. So it's a difficult decision. If that was my home, I'd probably feel the same way. So, but when you can't control Mother Nature, but you can prepare for it,
Part of that preparation involves creating sand barriers, but
right now in Imperial Beach, there, and in fact all of Southern California, our beaches have a sand shortage.
Robert Guza is a sea level rise expert at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
Beaches in Southern California can no longer maintain themselves. They're not going to be sandy beaches. We can either maintain them and expect to pay the money or not have sandy beaches.
He says the flooding might look bad now, but with sea level rise expected to increase dramatically in the coming decades, the lack of sand could make that flooding catastrophic.
Rising sea level will take a chronic problem, shortage of sand, and see how bad it can get by just flooding the beaches on top of it that are already sand-starved.
Where are you going, bud? Do you not have your snack?
One school in Imperial Beach is taking this reality and turning it into a teachable moment.
So you got the Otay River coming right here up against the school, right up to the bay. The Otay River has a little outlet right here, which goes into a pipe, a drain pipe, that goes across the soccer field and pops up in the corner.
Kevin Court is principal of Bayside STEAM Academy, which has K through 6th grade students. When the San Diego Bay floods, an outlet pipe dumps salt water in a back corner of the school.
At a high spring tide several times a year, when the water flows up this way, it bubbles up in the back corner, and you can feel the salt crunch under your feet when you walk on it.
The school usually has this area blocked off, but it's been letting 4th and 5th graders near the area to track the overflow.
It's just something that's been a part of our school, but when we have a phenomenon like this happening in our backyard, let's learn about it. Let's learn about elevation and contour lines.
Back at the water, Stabenow says he's seen the beaches getting smaller.
Every year it seems like less and less comes back.
Stabenow says in years past, the city has paid to dump additional sand on the beaches, but it doesn't stay there for long.
That's what's the biggest concern, you know, for me and the lifeguards is no beach, you know. If there's no beach, then there's no people here, you know. People don't come to the beach if there's no beach. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point.
Seawalls and other barriers are the best protection against high tides right now. Climate scientists say the ocean has risen by nearly a foot in IB over the past century, but it could rise by several feet before this century is done. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
This week, we're bringing you the stories of people directly impacted by climate change. And no one will feel the impacts more than young people. So today, we're hearing from 17-year-old Arabelle Meyer from Carlsbad.
It's not something that just a few people should be thinking about. Like, it should be, education should bring it to the forefront of everyone's minds. And I think that everyone, if they just make small changes in their lives, like the mentality that I think a lot of people have is maybe some people, like if I do something, like say using less plastic, in the long run, it's not going to make a big difference. It's just me. I'm just a single person out of millions. But if everyone had that mentality, then nothing would change.
Our week of special coverage wraps up tomorrow. KPBS Roundtable will devote a full show to the issue of climate change. All of our stories are on San Diego's climate crisis, can be found at kpbs.org. There are plenty of amazing ships and vessels docked in San Diego Bay, and one in particular is back in the U.S. for the first time in a decade. KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chetlani takes us on board before this scientific research vessel takes off again.
This comes out, this guy goes in like that.
Paleontologist Richard Norris of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography is no stranger to the Droides Resolution. He's been on board for 6 expeditions, and today he's our tour guide. Here he points to a core, or the tube where mud and dirt can be squeezed into, and he's putting it into different drill bits, which the ship uses to bore hundreds of meters, sometimes deeper, into the Earth's crust. Some of these bits are more heavy-duty than others, depending on the difficulty of the terrain at the seafloor. But why, might you ask, is all this deep ocean dirt digging happening in the first place?
There's 2 things. There's discovery, and then there's also potential benefits to people.
Norris says there's life deep within the Earth's crust, or microorganisms, that we don't know much about. And accessing them and studying them could help humanity learn what it takes to live in extreme conditions.
On the discovery side, we really don't know what the limits of life are. How deep can it go? How hot can it go? How acidic can it be? You know, what are the conditions in which life finally just gives up and says, we're done?
And the way these scientists answer these questions is by filling up these cores with sediment from around the world. It's been to over 100 sites, from off the coast of Japan to the Gulf of Cadiz by Portugal. This research vessel has been part of the International Ocean Discovery Program since 2004. Around half of the expeditions aboard this vessel are intended to help scientists understand changes in Earth's climate over history. In fact, the sediment collected off the coast of Chile could help scientists understand glacial activity from maybe even 100,000 years ago. Making those discoveries goes like this. The core is filled up with sediment, it's cut open with a saw, laid out in a lab, and scrutinized by all types of scientific experts on board.
This one comes from Madagascar. But we have found ammonites like this one in cores on expeditions that I've been on.
Expeditions are usually 2 months long, and when scientists aren't busy searching for things like ammonites or fossils of sea creatures that lived tens of millions of years ago, they're taking a break from their 12-hour shifts to have a cookie or catch up on sleep. And right now, the crew's loading up food and supplies for its next expedition, which will be to the Guaymas Basin.
So the seafloor is being created in the Guaymas Basin. It's very hot. There's lavas erupting, into sediments and probably on the seafloor. There's black smokers down there, these vents that are spewing out all kinds of chemicals as well as life.
So, Nora says, it should be an exciting trip. The Joydes Resolution vessel plans to leave port this weekend on path to the Guaymas Basin in the Gulf of California, where it plans to stay, drilling deep into the ocean for about 2 months. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, a whistleblower raises urgent concern over intelligence at the highest level. That's coming up at 7 right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Great news for outdoor enthusiasts in North County. A new trail is in the works for the Strawberry Fields in Carlsbad. The City Council has agreed to spend nearly $700,000 on the project. The 2-mile trail would be located on the south end of the lagoon and go through the Strawberry Fields. The city will work with SDG&E, which owns the land. Now, whether it's a hike or any other outdoor plans, you can expect warm and sunny weather this weekend. Marvin Gomez has tonight's forecast.
Hope you're having a great day so far. I'm AccuWeather's Marvin Gomez. Thanks for staying with us here on KPBS News. Overall, we've had a cool day, but dry conditions for most of the region, and it's also been breezy across the deserts and the higher elevations. As we head into the weekend, we are going to see a warming trend. Looking at our satellite and radar, you can see how overall, for the most part, we've been dry here across Southern California, and heading into tonight, increasing clouds throughout the area. Overall, temperatures coming down to 62 degrees across the metro area and the rest of San Diego County. You can see even cooler temperatures across Ramona, upper 40s for you tonight. Oceanside 57, into Mount Laguna 46 degrees with mostly clear conditions. Looking at our futurecast, notice how throughout the overnight hours and heading into tomorrow, we're going to get a couple of clouds from the marine layer, but overall not as much as what we had today. Into San Diego County for tomorrow afternoon, notice temperatures in the upper 70s along Oceanside, San Diego 76, Chula Vista 75, and we are going to see mid-90s across Borrego Springs with mostly sunny conditions out there. Also into Mount Laguna with a high only at 69 degrees. Here's your AccuWeather 5-day extended forecast along the coast. We are going to see those temperatures rise to the low 80s heading into our Sunday, but another trough is going to be moving across the West Coast, so we're definitely going to see somewhat of a cool down as we get next week started. 79 for our Monday, heading inland, 90s for the weekend, and mid 80s again starting next week with a couple more clouds as well. Even the higher elevations, we are going to see those temperatures for the weekend in the mid to low 70s, and once the trough comes in on Monday, 69 will be the high. As far as the desert is concerned, temperatures are going to be almost getting into the upper 90s for Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday we are going to be in the mid 90s. That is all on my end. Thanks for staying with us here on KPBS News. I'm AccuWeather's Marvin Gomez. Back to you.
President Trump is suing his longtime accounting firm to try to keep his tax returns private. The move comes after New York's district attorney subpoenaed the records. This marks the first time Trump's legal team has argued in federal court. The president should be immune from criminal investigations while in office. Former special counsel Robert Mueller acknowledged the Justice Department forbids federal charges against a sitting president. The New York DA is investigating payments made to 2 women who accuse President Trump of infidelity. Home-sharing website Airbnb plans to go public next year. The company put out a short statement today to comply with federal regulations. It did not provide any details on when it would debut on Wall Street. Airbnb has more than 7 million listings worldwide. Short-term rentals have faced criticism for their impact on neighborhoods. Here in San Diego, in fact, city leaders passed regulations that were later rescinded before taking effect. A military veteran who suffers from PTSD sits in a San Diego jail tonight awaiting trial. Prosecutors say they plan to try Eric Benson for a second time for making phone threats. More now from KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh.
Eric Benson remains in jail after being arrested in November, charged with 2 counts of leaving threatening voicemails at the office of his VA-funded psychologist. His wife, Elaine Benson, says he acted up when he was trying to change his prescription.
With the support of my work, friends, and getting through it. I mean, the best we can every day.
Benson was wounded by a roadside bomb in Iraq in 2010. The VA rated him 100% disabled for PTSD. A VA doctor also testified against him in his recent trial. After the jury deadlocked in his case, federal prosecutors announced Tuesday that they plan to try Benson a second time, according to his attorney Alex Fuqua.
They're really running the show here at this point. There's only so much we can do for Eric, and we are at the mercy of the government.
Psychologist Cynthia Boyd has testified in other cases involving vets with PTSD.
This is the lowest level case I've ever been retained on. I'm usually retained on returning veterans who commit much more serious crimes up to murder.
She believes Benson needs to be released to a treatment program. Federal prosecutors did not comment on the decision to try Benson a second time. A spokesman referred to a judge's order which says Benson remains a threat to himself and others. At the moment, his next trial date is January 6. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
Thanks, Steve. An update on plans to revamp a large piece of military land near the airport. The U.S. Navy and Sandag have signed a formal agreement to potentially redevelop 70 acres. An initial agreement was made this summer. Most of the property includes what used to be known as Spa War. The city of San Diego hopes to turn the area into a major transit hub with connections to the airport. It looks like science fiction, but the Navy confirms it's real. Video recorded by fighter pilots show what appears to be UFOs flying at high speeds. More now from CNN's Randy Kay.
Look at that thing. It's rotating.
Images of that rotating thing captured by U.S. Navy aircraft, sensors locking in on the target. Commander David Fravor saw it firsthand during a training mission, describing it like a 40-foot-long tic-tac, maneuvering rapidly and changing direction.
As we both looked out the right side of our airplane, we saw a disturbance in the water and a white object, oblong, pointing north.
The object was first sighted in 2004, then similar objects again in 2015. Footage of the sightings, declassified by the military, weren't made public until December 2017 by the New York Times and a group that researches UFOs.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
This was extremely abrupt, like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall. The ability to hover over the water and then start a vertical climb from basically zero up towards about 12,000 feet and then accelerate in less than 2 seconds and disappear is something I had never seen in my life.
The Navy says it still doesn't know what the objects are, and officials aren't speculating. A Navy spokesman simply confirming to CNN the objects seen in the various clips are unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs.
The UFO reports were first investigated by a secret $22 million program, part of the Defense Department budget, that investigated reports of UFOs. The program has since been shut down, but it was run by a military intelligence official who told CNN they found compelling evidence that we, quote, may not be alone. Randy Kay, CNN, New York.
Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. Sci-fi is the latest genre for Hollywood star Brad Pitt. On Morning Edition, KPBS cinema junkie Beth Accomando reviews Ad Astra. And on Roundtable, San Diego's climate crisis, we'll have a discussion with KPBS reporters on this week's special climate change coverage. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.